So I pre-recorded the video before the live stream, and that was obviously a very dumb idea because had I known they were going to give a doctor ratio for free in this upcoming patch, I would have definitely changed the whole trajectory of the video. But just understand that the same video does apply, or you can just go ahead and skip him because you're getting him for free and just pull other characters because he is going to end up using the 4-star weapon Swordsplay anyways. But we're still going to talk about the character in the video nonetheless, so I'm going to leave it in the video. You just got done watching the 1.6 live stream and you realize we got 2 characters revealed in the passing week for 2.0. So not only do we have 2 very nice and very strong looking characters to come off the next patch, but we also have more characters that seem to have as much value coming in the coming patch. And in today's video, I'm going to help you make that decision because in my honest opinion, this is going to be the hardest 2 patches we've ever had in Honkai Star Rail. Yo, what up? Toshi here. So we're going to split the video up in 4 different parts. We're going to go over each and every single character, and I'm going to talk about their strengths, weaknesses, and what value they're going to bring for your accounts. Let's start off with the first character, Dr. Ratio. And what I find very interesting about the character is not the fact that he holds an L at your opponents, but the fact of the matter is he has a very nice looking body type. Now, I'm not one to fawn over the bodies of males. I just admire them because, for one, it takes a lot of dedication to have muscles as much as he does, and 2, to maintain a body like that is a lot of work. So they have my respect coming from another, boy. He has the best element alongside Quantum in the game, and he has a very nice kit. He goes into the hunt path, but he feels more than just a hunt character because he has a follow-up attack. That makes him very unique to the characters in the hunt path, aside from Topaz, which that is a character that will work really well with him because he does have a follow-up attack. Now let's get the obvious out of the way. For those of you that have Daniel, you can definitely skip Dr. Ratio. He's going to be a character that I probably wouldn't advise for you to pull because you already have an imaginary character and one that is the strongest damage dealer in the game at that. Daniel hits really hard, has very nice AoE coverage, and is very reliable. He has very nice raw damage. No matter where you bring him, he's going to get the job done. Dr. Ratio is a character that needs to be in fights where there's 1 to 3 enemies. When there's 5 enemies, then the character kind of falls off. But Daniel can cover that weakness. So therefore, if you have this character, well then just go for other characters instead of Dr. Ratio, because Daniel is just more flexible. But don't you worry, because it seems like Hoyoverse is not going to make the Memories of Chaos tailor-made for AoE damage dealers. Instead, they're probably going to get their own game mode where they'll shine. As of right now, the Memories of Chaos and all in-game contents favor those of single target and blast-like archetypes. And Dr. Ratio is a character that has single target damage, so he fits comfortably where the meta is in the game right now. So for those of you that like to play with single target damage dealers, I can safely advise a character like Dr. Ratio. Not only does he have a very rare element just like Seal, he has very nice numbers just like Seal, and in some scenarios he seems to hit harder than this damage dealer at Eidolon 0. And for free to play, that's really impressive. One of the best things about Dr. Ratio of Topaz and Numbi is that Dr. Ratio is going to push up the action forward of Numbi in the turn order, which is going to increase the overall damage for Topaz. And Topaz is going to buff the follow-up attack damage of Dr. Ratio, while allowing him to do the follow-up attacks as well. These 2 characters are going to synergize with one another very, very well. One of the differences from Dr. Ratio compared to Daniel is that he is a much more flexible character. Not only does he work with other damage dealers, but he doesn't take away from the skill point economy like Daniel does, which makes him an all-around better character for team comps when designing teams and playing around with unique teams. And as I mentioned before, he is a part of the imaginary element. Being able to delay the enemy's action and reduce their speed is very, very strong. And considering that there is a lot of enemies in the game that are currently weak to imaginary, he's going to find himself having a very nice position in the current meta. With him being imaginary, he's able to utilize one of the best imaginary supports in the game. Yukong is a character that many other characters have not been able to utilize as well. And that's because Yukong, first and foremost, buffs up the imaginary damage of your damage dealers, but she also gives crit damage and attack, which is very good for damage dealers in general. 12% imaginary damage bonus, on top of the up to 24% imaginary damage bonus depending on the level of your planetary rendezvous. And if you have Eidolon 6 for Yukong, she becomes more flexible in teams with Dr. Ratio and other imaginary damage dealers. However, even if you don't have Eidolon 6 for the character, you can still utilize her in the same team with Dr. Ratio. And considering Dr. Ratio does have a follow-up attack in his kit, well, you'll be able to buff up the follow-up attack damage with the crit damage or the attack buffs even when it's not his turn. Lastly, Yukong's basic attacks deal a lot of toughness reducing damage to the enemy, so whenever you're fighting enemies that are weak to imaginary, you're going to find yourself breaking those weaknesses much more often, because Dr. Ratio not only has his attacks, a follow-up attack, but he has Yukong contributing to the damage breaking of the toughness bar as well. So this is currently my hypercarry team for Daniel, and you can slot in Dr. Ratio in place of Daniel, and he would work really well in this team. So if you have Topaz, you can safely replace your Ting Yun and still have a very nice team. Dr. Ratio and Topaz is going to benefit from Yukong as well, because the cool thing about Yukong is that even when it's not Dr. Ratio or Topaz's turn, both Numbi and the follow-up attack from Dr. Ratio is going to benefit from the buffs that Yukong provides for the team. And I know what you might be thinking, but Toshi, this seems like a team that may not work because of the skill point economy. Well, if you take into consideration Luocha and Topaz are two characters that are skill point positive, while Yukong being able to elemental skill every time she takes her turn, and Dr. Ratio being able to use his elemental skill as well, you have 2 skill points negating 2 skill points that is being provided, so it evens out itself in total. However, if you need a lot of debuffs thrown onto the enemy, then you can use Silverwolf, who is a very nice single target debuffing character. He works especially well alongside Hunt characters, and considering Dr. Ratio's Hunt, you're going to benefit from all of those debuffs that Silver puts onto the enemy, and man, does she throw a lot of debuffs on her first turn. And for those of you that are going to be rolling for Dr. Ratio, then I'm going to recommend Source Play, which is going to be the best light cone you can use on the character across the board. That's because you give the character up to 80% damage bonus depending on the level of your light cone. And if you have Refinement 1, then you give up to 40% damage bonus. This scales really well for characters that hit the same target over and over, and considering Dr. Ratio is a character that only has single target damage and no pseudo AoE like Seal, he's going to utilize the light cone better than she does. So if you are struggling with crit stats on your Dr. Ratio, I can safely recommend cruising the Stellar Sea, and that's because Dr. Ratio is a character like other Hunt characters that does not do multi-hits. He does very few hits whenever he takes his turn. So if you take into consideration all of your hits need to crit the enemy, having a light cone that gives you a lot of crit rate is going to benefit him better than a character that has a lot of multi-hits like Jing, for instance. Take this from a Seal main. My Seal has 80% crit rate, and whenever she does miss her crit on her ultimate, boy do I want to punch my monitor, let's just say that. If you're looking for a character that plays around with the follow-up attack playstyle, or you want a character that hits hard like Seal in the form of single target damage, then I can definitely recommend Dr. Ratio for your account. And considering he is of a rare element just like Seal is with the imaginary element, you're going to be very satisfied with your purchase. I make it sound like you're going to the market to pick up, some groceries. Now, this is a character most of you are going to be anticipating not only next patch, but for 2.0 as well. Ruan Mei is a character that we've made a few videos on, and every single video has contained Bronya in it, and for good reason, because Bronya has set the playing field for Harmony characters going forward, and considering Ruan Mei is a Harmony character and our first limited Harmony character, she has a lot to compete with pre-existing in the game. So if you're new here, then do what you will with this information. Bronya is my favorite character. And one of the reasons why is because she has a lot of, she does that, what she's doing right now, but she has a lot of value baked into her kit. And if you're able to utilize this character in your team comps or her team comps, then you have a significant advantage over those that are not able to utilize this character as well. Now, what makes Bronya one of the strongest characters in the game is her elemental skill, being able to remove a debuff and push up the action forward of that damage dealer, giving them a turn and increasing their damage all in a single skill. This makes her leagues above any other character in the game, and because of that elemental skill, Bronya has some tailor-made light cones. Now, of course, that does have the character's face on it, so it would be best in slot for the character. But if you take into consideration, her elemental skill gives an additional turn to the ally, you can utilize this light cone to its full potential every single turn. So this damage buff stacks with the damage buff you already have for your elemental skill. So because of Bronya existing, Ruan Mei has a lot of competition to compete with. But you watched 1.6, so you know how strong Ruan Mei is going to be. And considering she has as much value as she does have, she seems to be a very overloaded character, Bronya should be scared, because it seems like there is going to be a new Harmony Queen coming very soon. Now, Ruan Mei is definitely a mix between Bronya and Asta, so wherever you use these two characters, you can safely put in Ruan Mei, and considering she's a very flexible character, you can honestly use Ruan Mei with not only Asta, but Bronya as well. Heck, you can probably use all 3 of these characters in the same team if you're looking to do some very fast clear or zero cycle in Memories of Chaos. For most players, you're going to use Bronya alongside your Ruan Mei. That's because if you're able to utilize the 2 best buffing characters in the game, You're going to give your damage dealers the best damage output they can possibly have. And considering Ruan Mei is a skill point positive character and Bronya is a skill point neutral to skill point detriment character at her worst, she's going to even out with Ruan Mei when it comes to skill point economy. So then you can have a character like Huo in the team party not have to worry about skill points, because Huo is a skill point neutral character, and depending on Eidolon levels you have for this character, it becomes much more easier on the skill point economy. And then your last character can be literally any other damage dealer in the game. You can literally use whoever you want. If you are a fan of Seal, even though I do believe that there's going to be a better character coming in the near future for Seal, which we'll talk about later in the video, you can still utilize these 3 characters together, because Ruan Mei is going to give buffs that is dependent on her own turn, which is everything a fast damage dealer needs. And being able to utilize attack and energy from this character means your Seal is going to ult more often. And then Bronya is just good for any character in general, giving an additional turn and a lot of damage bonus. But considering Ruan Mei doesn't provide any crit buffs, characters like Kafka can utilize all of the buffs that Ruan Mei provides in her kit to the full capacity. Damage bonuses, speed, and a lot of skill points is all Kafka needs. Dual DPS teams like Jing with Topaz is going to love Ruan Mei in the same team as well, because buffs for the whole turn that is dependent on Ruan Mei's turns means that all of your damage dealers is going to be able to utilize all of those damage buffs at all given points of the battle. One of the clear winners for Ruan Mei is going to be Jing Lu, and that's because they're both ice element. And considering Ruan Mei is a character that buffs the weakness break efficiency of the team overall, while being able to freeze the enemy not only for an additional turn, but do it more often, means characters like Jing Lu is going to not only have to worry about not having your allies be drained too much because they won't be taking more damage from the enemies, but you'll be able to dish out more damage because the enemies will be weakness broken. So that's a huge benefit for Jing Lu teams and dual DPS teams with Blade as well. Considering Mono Quantum is my favorite team in the game, and if I'm able to utilize a character that is able to buff the weakness break efficiency of the team, well, that's crazy, because every character here is going to contribute towards breaking the enemy's toughness bar. That means if you're able to do it more often, then characters like Silverwolf and Seal are going to benefit from weakness break, but Silverwolf especially. All of the buffs that Ruan Mei provides to the team means that everyone here is going to be able to dish out their own fair share of personal damage, alongside that weakness break as well. Let's just say our Quantum Queens have finally got another buff. So for those of you that do have Bronya, you're going to love Ruan Mei. That's because not only can you use the 2 characters together, but even if you don't have Bronya, having Ruan Mei in your account is going to put your account leagues above other accounts, if we're looking at this from a meta perspective, because she is our first limited Harmony character after all. If you are in a team with Jing Lu, Planetary Rendezvous is going to be your best bet. Action forward for your allies after using your ultimate is going to be very good for those dot teams in general. Being able to increase your break effect and regenerate energy whenever you attack the enemy is going to make this Light Cone Memories of the Past best in slot for Ruan Mei. And that's because she is a skill point positive character, so she's going to be using basic attacks most of the time, generating energy and contributing to the weakness break of the enemy, and that break effect is going to strengthen her break effect efficiently, not only for her but for the team as well. But depending on the level of your premium light cones, you can still utilize meshing Kongs on the character, and that's because this is a 3-star and you get refinements for it very easily. And considering it is best in slot for most Harmony characters in the game, you can't go wrong with it either. So Ruan Mei seems to have the best value for not only 1.6 but 2.0 as well, but I'll leave that decision for you after we do go over the other characters, of course. Black Swan, Mommy Swan, is a 5-star version of Sampo basically, pretty much what Black Swan boils down to, because obviously she's Nihility, and obviously she is Wind just like Sampo, so it only makes sense that she would cover the same niche that Sampo already covers, but just do it better because she's a 5-star. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, because that makes her a very valuable character to have alongside Kafka. And considering Kafka is going to get Ruan Mei as a pseudo buff in the next patch, another buff with the patch following means Kafka is going to finally have a nice spot in the meta. That's only if Black Swan has the same debuffs that Sampo puts onto the enemies himself. And if she has AoE, then that's even more kudos to her. Now, one of the things that she needs in order to be a character that has a slot into Kafka's teams is not only a defense break would be very nice, being able to put her own dots into the enemy so that Kafka can then detonate those dots on AoE and single target, and have her own personal damage to add alongside Kafka. That would make her one of the best ally to have alongside Kafka in her dot team. So this means goodbye to Sampo, but it doesn't matter to me because I never built the character anyways. But one thing's for sure, For those of you that do have Kafka, you probably will find yourself using Huo in the same team with your Kafka and Black Swan. And that's because the attack and the energy that Huo does provide to the team is going to make her a very valuable character to have alongside those dot characters. So I envision a team with Ruan Mei, Kafka, Black Swan, and Huo. That is a very expensive team because it has 4 limited characters, but we are approaching this point in Honkai Star Rail where you really want to focus down on the playstyles that you enjoy overall in the game and who you want to build on your account in general anyways. If Black Swan already throws defense break onto the enemy, even more defense break with the resolution light cone is going to make this very valuable in the character depending on the scenario you find yourself using her in. Good Night and Sleep Well, which is best in slot for pretty much every dot character in the game, is going to be very valuable on the character because you're increasing her dot damage by a ton. If she has a lot of personal damage, then this most likely will be best in slot on the character, but it is a gacha light cone, so some of you may not have this with many refinements. And that's okay because there is light cones like Fermata which can be utilized on the character. You get break effect and you get damage increase whenever the enemy is affected with wind or shock. Heck, even Silverwolf's light cone might be really good on the character, as if she's a character that needs to use her ultimate as often as she can. But you probably might be using this on your Silverwolf already, and I don't suggest you taking this away from your Silverwolf, because it's Bronya Jr. He deserves the best. But that's my Bronya bias coming out. So for those of you that have already been using Sampo with your Kafka, then you'll probably find yourself just going for Black Swan, which he does release, and finally replacing this bozo once and for all. I'm not saying Sampo is a bad character, he's just a character I never liked, I never trusted. But I think most people that play Honkai Star don't trust him either. But that's pretty much it. We made a video on Black Swan recently, and that's a more in-depth video. But there's only so much you can say about Black Swan because she is a very niche character. She is the most niche character we've had as a limited character in Honkai Star Rail yet. So for those of you that have Kafka, you can go for the character. And if you don't have Kafka, then don't roll for the character. This is the easiest character to skip if you don't have Kafka, to be honest. So this may be a possibility, but Black Swan maybe works like Pela in the sense of having a lot of debuffs that she throws onto the enemy in AoE scenarios, and is a much more versatile character because of that. But I really wouldn't hold my breath on it, because that seems very unlikely at this point. Oh snap, it's Bronya again. That's because we're receiving another Harmony character in 2.0, and that character is no other than Sparkle, the one character I'm devoting myself to going forward. And that's because she is a character that a lot of us quantum enthusiasts have been waiting for. But even if you are not a mono-quantum believer, maybe you are a mono-copium believer, and you believe that the mono-quantum team is still copium. Well, for other teams, she's still a very valuable character, and only time will tell if that stands to fruition. So following the release of Hanabi, or Sparkle, but I'm going to call her Hanabi because most of you know what her real name is. Okay, it's actually Sparkle, but it's Hanabi. Hanabi, that character. She's going to be a 5-star version of a pre-existing character, because that seems like the safest and the most predictable route that Hoyoverse will take with characters going forward. So I expect it to be a 5-star version of a pre-existing character. Considering we've gotten energy in the form of Huo very recently, I don't expect it to be a 5-star version of Ting Yun. Considering that Ruan Mei is a mix between Asta and Bronya, I definitely don't see Hanabi being a character that literally power creeps these characters again. Considering Yukong is a premier imaginary buffer, I definitely don't see Hanabi being a character that is, even though she's the opposite element of Yukong, being better than Yukong in imaginary teams. However, Hanya is a character that is not a premier physical buffer, but yet a character that works very nice in dual DPS team comps and provides skill points for the team overall. But if you look at their names, Hanya, Hanabi, I mean her name is Sparkle, but Hanabi, Hanya, it seems like they're going to be very similar to one another. So if Hanabi is able to provide skill points just like Hanya does, then that makes Hanabi a very valuable character because she's going to be a 5-star character after all, a limited one at that. So a 5-star limited Harmony character that provides skill points to the team is going to literally break the game. And I know I'm someone that may exaggerate at times, but since Bronya is a 5-star character that literally breaks the game because she fundamentally changes the way you play the game with her elemental skill, it's not too far-fetched to think that a 5-star character that provides skill points to the team, which is a fundamental of the game that you really can't bypass, well, if you're able to give more skill points to the team, that is going to bypass the rules that you must abide by when it comes to Honkai Star Rail's combat system. So I might be getting ahead of myself here, and that's because I am very excited for the release of this character. But let's say she is not a character that provides skill points to the team. How valuable would she still be as a 5-star Harmony character? Well, let's talk about it. She is going to be best in slot in the Quantum Queen's team. And And that's because all of the characters in this team is going to be the same element as her. And considering this team desperately needed that same element to be the buffer of this team, well, we finally have that character in the form of Sparkle, Hanabi. So for the longest time, you probably have been using Bronya if the enemy was weak to wind. Yukong you could use, but you probably didn't use Yukong even if the enemy was weak to imaginary. Ayla if the enemy was weak to ice. Asta if the enemy was weak to fire. Ting Yun if the enemy was weak to lightning, and so on and so forth. You pretty much just matched the element the enemy was already weak to. But if you wanted a very safe team and a team where you didn't have to change any of the characters in it, you could just use Lynx in that last slot. And this team is not at its full capacity because you have 2 defensive options when you only need 1, because Fu Xuan is a very strong defensive character. And therefore, you're missing out on buffing up your Silverwolf and your Seal, who contributes a lot to the team's overall damage. So with the release of Hanabi, you're able to buff up this team's damage greatly, with her being a Harmony character and being able to slot in that Planetary Rendezvous for an overall quantum damage bonus to the team. And Fu Xuan can finally be built as a damage dealer. So that's something we'll save for a different video. So Hanabi has a lot of value already with just being a quantum Harmony character, because she has a very rare element and she has one of the best half in the game. But let's say Hanabi is a character that has action forward pushing as well, which would make her very similar to Bronya. Then you're able to utilize past and future, which increases the damage of the ally that's going to be taking the turn right after Hanabi. So if that character does have any action forward pushing in her kit, then you're going to love the light cones we already have for Harmony characters. Considering Bronya is the only character that can utilize those light cones, is not too far-fetched to believe that they'll finally add a character that can also utilize those very strong Harmony light cones as well. Now, I do think one of the coolest things about Hanabi is that you're able to utilize Hanabi and Bronya in the same team, and that's because they're both Harmony characters, and I expect Hanabi to be a skill point positive character as well. But even if you're not using her in a mono quantum team, you're still going to have a lot of value in teams with Bronya and Ruan Mei and any other Harmony character. So let's just throw QQ in here, and I know QQ is a character that is quantum just like Hanabi, but you don't have to slot in Planetary Rendezvous if you don't want to. You can use any other light cone you want to and still get value on the character. But depending on the buffs that Hanabi does provide for the team, he is going to be a very nice character in combination with Bronya, just like Ruan Mei is now in combination with Bronya herself. But if she does give skill points just like Hanya does, then she's going to be one of the best characters for Daniel and characters like QQ as well. So Daniel will be getting a buff. I can't believe I'm actually saying that. So with the release of Hanabi, is Mono Quantum going to become one of the best teams in the game? I can actually say yes, because every character there is going to contribute to the overall team's damage, and considering we finally have that Harmony character we needed to slot Planetary Rendezvous and just buff the team, you finally have a team that is flexible anywhere you go, provides the same amount of value everywhere you go, and we haven't even talked about 4-star Mono Quantum teams, which is still going to be very good following the release of Zui XY. I always butcher the character's name, dang. So for me personally, considering that she is literally my profile picture, she is my first and foremost pick of all of the characters from not only 1.6, but 2.0 as well. And Ruan Mei is very, very close, but I am a Mono Quantum believer. That's going to be the video here. I hope you got something out of this. This was honestly a very long video, but a very fun video to make. I really do love talking about support characters, because in my honest opinion, the support characters are the most fun characters to talk about in Honkai Star Rail, because they have very diverse kits, and they're not just do damage, kill enemy, do damage to another enemy, kill enemy. They're instead characters that are able to buff your other characters in various ways, or provide different values for the team based on what they have in their kits. And that to me is far more interesting than just do damage, kill enemy, do damage, kill enemy. But in all seriousness, my first pick is going to be Hanabi for all of 1.6 and 2.0. That is if you are playing with the Mono Quantum team. But we have to wait and see for what Hanabi does provide outside of that team as well, because she may end up being a better character than Ruan Mei in some scenarios. And Ruan Mei is going to be the first and foremost pick for most players, if not every player at this point, and that's because Ruan Mei is a very strong character. You saw how she performs in the live stream. She's going to be a very nice character across the board. If you use her with Bronya, you're literally going to crush all of the game's contents. We are getting Floor 12 to Memories of Chaos very, very shortly, right? And if you are a fan of Kafka's teams, then pick up Black Swan. So for Kafka mains, pick up Black Swan first and foremost, and then Ruan Mei. But you can get Ruan Mei and then get Black Swan afterwards, depending on how lucky you are. But if you don't enjoy the imaginary element, you don't enjoy characters like Yukong, and you're not a fan of Topaz's assets, I can't believe I actually unironically said that word, then don't go for Dr. Ratio, because he is definitely the easiest to skip from not only all of the 1.6 6, but 2.0 as well, even though he is a damage dealer. But that's going to be the video here. Best of luck to your pools, to whoever you decide to roll for, and I will see you all in the next video. My voice hurts so bad, so I'm going to go drink some water. Have a nice weekend. Peace.